r/askreddit. Firefighters of Reddit. What's the dumbest person you had to save in a stupid situation? Austin, TX, Heb, circa 1990. A little girl needs to use the toilet. She locks the door, manages to get onto the toilet and use it all by herself. She's a big girl after all. But the toilet is tall and getting down is scary. Better wait for mom to come help. Except she can't get in because the little idiot locked the door and is too scared of the 5 inches from her feet to the floor, and so just sits there crying while sitting on the toilet. The firemen break down the door and the little girl is saved. Goddamn, I was a stupid kid. Edit. Who boy, this blew up. I'll try to answer questions I was asked and provide clarification so y'all can stop asking. I was really little, guys. Like 3, maybe 4. This was a single-use bathroom, not the one with stalls. So when I locked it, it was an actual door. I don't recall which specific Heb, but probably Riverside or 7th Street. Why didn't they use a key or unscrew the door? Good question. Not something I asked at the time, of course, but when I was older I thought the same things and shrugged it off as someone had to have tried that. It wasn't possible for one reason or another, so they called the firemen. Edit 2. I just came out of watching Ready or Not. Shit was great, y'all should see it. The plot twist though. A motorist had a bad alternator and the car died while he was driving. The electric lock control stopped working. We were dispatched for a person trapped in a motor vehicle. On arrival, the advice was given to manually lift the lock knob. You can easily tell the ones who will not survive the first 24 hours of the zombie apocalypse. Reminds me of the joke where the guy locks his keys in his car, so he calls a locksmith. And can you hurry? It's about to rain and I left the windows open. If completely forgotten about this until reading yours. Called to a lockout. Get to the location and are met with, we just need a jump start, and think, okay, wrong call. Get out the cables and ask them to pop the hood. Oh, we can't. We're locked out. Driver is holding keys in hand. Passenger window is down. I starting backing away, assuming some kind of theft scam. They actually thought they were locked out because the key fob wasn't unlocking the door. It turns out the fob battery had died. Showed them how to use the key after checking ID again. The registration retrieved though the open window. Vehicle battery was not dead. 2 bikini-clad girls had to be rescued from a swift-moving river in a canoe. Neither girl brought a life vest or a paddle. Something shit creek. My dad was witness to someone being stupid and rescued by a firefighter. I posted this to the Tales from Tech Support subreddit a while ago. Here's the copy paste. My dad worked for IBM's A/400, a mainframe system, tech support division for over 10 years, 1992 to 2003. A customer called in because he needed to run a report and send it out to the networked printer. For whatever reason, the report was failing to generate and the guy on the phone was freaking out because some corporate bigwig demanded that this report be printed and on his desk by 3 p.m. Just another day at work. About 10 minutes into the call, my dad starts to hear this strange high-pitched noise in the background. Dad, if you don't mind my asking, what's that noise at the background? Caller, oh, that's the fire alarm. Fire alarm? Yeah, the building is on fire. Far be it from me to tell you what to do, but shouldn't you get out of there? Dan, you don't understand. I have to get this report printed. Now are you going to help me or not? So they continue to troubleshoot the issue. A few minutes after that, my dad hears shouting in the background. Dad, there seems to be a lot of yelling in the background. Is everything okay? Caller, yeah, it's fine. It's just the firefighters evacuating the building. Shouldn't you get out of there too? Dan, I absolutely have to get this report printed. Are you going to help me? I'm not sure that I should. We pay our support contract. I have to get this printed and you have to help me. It's almost 3 p.m. It's just a report. I don't think it's worth risking your life. The caller starts to get furious when the shouting in the background gets much louder. A firefighter has come over to the guy on the phone and starts barking orders at him to get out of the building. The caller tells the firefighter, look, I have to print this report before 3 p.m. and I can't leave until it's printed. Over the phone, Dad hears the firefighter scream, I don't give a damn about your goddamned report. The building is on fire. Now move. There's a scuffling noise and the phone handset on the other end drops to the ground as the firefighter physically drags the caller away. After that, all Dad could hear was the sound of the fire alarm and various crackling noises. Needless to say, the report did not get printed by 3 p.m. How would the guy's boss know if he had printed the report or not? He could say it burned up in the fire and he has to reprint it. New job interview question. Would you be willing to stay in a burning building to print a report? I've gotten the impression that Americans take their jobs too seriously. Or at the very least their employers expect them to. Would you be willing to work extra time without overpay if necessary in a minimum wage job interview? Former fire and rescue firefighter here. Have helped release several dogs and children stuck in the mechanism part of a recliner chair. Also a bird stuck in a tree. Go figure. I'm literally so fucking paranoid about my cat getting caught up in the recliner mechanisms. I have a couch that reclines on both ends and a lazarboy as well. My cat stays under the couch a lot, so I always check before I close them. But my roommate tells me that I'm ridiculous. My cat will move and just shuts them when he uses them. Which isn't like ever, thankfully, because he likes his couch. I'm always afraid I'm gonna like decapitate her. This just intensified my fears. I think I'm gonna make this mandatory now. Edit. Okay, I need to get rid of all recliners I've ever had, even in the past. Right now, holy shit. I was a volunteer firefighter many years back. One summer, after a long period of no rain, two good old boys decide to have a few dozen beers and take their Jeep into a nearby field to go off-roading. Well, 2 feet tall corn stalks that are bone dry wind up getting jammed up into the undercarriage, which, on a 90+ degree day, turns out to be hot enough to ignite a fire. The owner of the field sees the situation unfolding from their house and calls for fire and police. Given the proximity to my location, I go directly to the scene after hearing the page go out and see these two arseholes trying to drive the Jeep faster and faster to put the fire out. Eventually, the engine gives out, but they won't leave the car. I physically had to reach in, burning my arms in the process, since I didn't respond to the station first to get my turnout gear, and pull them out. Somehow, they decided that remaining in the car would slow down the flames. And because they thought it was a good idea to continue driving a burning vehicle around a dry field, we now have a significant brush fire and have to call mutual aid from another county to help douse the fire. State police get involved. I have a nice trip to the hospital. And arseholes lose their Jeep and the remainder of their booze. And arseholes lose their Jeep and the remainder of their booze. And go to jail for trespassing and starting a brush fire, right? So no shit, there I was. Wavy ye olde memory crossfade effect. We got a call about a little kid stuck in a bathtub. Nobody could make heads or tails of how a child can get physically stuck in a bathtub, so we rocked up in one of our engines and had a look. What had happened was that the child, almost 3 years old, had been left in the bath to play while it drained. The drain had a screwed down sieve in it, with 5 holes. Kiddo had 5 fingers, and must have thought it a good idea to jam them into said holes. Of course, they swelled up and got stuck. So now we had a kid attached to a bathtub drain, and no way to get at the screw holding him there. A buddy and me were sent down to get. We filled the tub back up a bit, enough so kiddo's hand was covered in water for cooling. We gave him the plushie, with instructions to make sure it doesn't get wet, gave him earplugs and a real-life fireman's helmet, TM, and went to town. 4 quick cuts around the drain hole, then bash in the tiles, and finally another cut through the drain. We then transported the boy tub hybrid to the hospital for dehybridization, since the fingers had become quite blue, and we didn't want to induce tourniquet removal syndrome without access to proper medical care. The little guy joined the youth fire department as soon as he was old enough. We must have left a good impression. Good idea of tasking him with keeping the plushie dry. Keeps him occupied and gives him a bit of agency while being stuck. And holding plushies is calming, and having a friend through his hospital stay makes an uncomfortable situation better. Great emergency psychological support. Not me, but Dad was a firefighter in Nick and once responded to a call at a Chinese food restaurant where the owner's walkway was iced over. He apparently didn't speak very good English and maybe misunderstood the job of a fireman. Genuinely don't know. They salted down his front walkway for him and explained that this was 100% not their job. They all had a good laugh and the guy gave them all free egg rolls. PPL always used to ask him questions about crazy calls and he never enjoyed talking about that, so he would always tell that story. Happened in 1999, still makes me laugh to this day 20 years later. So he thought firemen were going to be able to ignite a fire so it could melt the ice? Makes sense to me. Dude picked up a metal ring from a hardware store in lieu of paying for an actual cock ring. It got stuck. He went to the hospital. The hospital called the fire department because a Dremel tool turned out to be the right tool for the job. You guys sure Dremel near the bait and tackle a lot. I use mine for small wood projects. It wasn't really his fault, but we had an old guy in a nursing home get his balls stuck in a shower chair. Had a drunk guy in Antarctica chase a penguin. Penguin stuck his beak through the offending drunk guy's calf. He got sent home. And a report on international treaty breach wound up on some Congress member's desk. Oh McMurdo, how I miss thee. Wow, penguins are powerful. Two I can recall, one specific. The specific one was a young girl around teenage years who decided those toddler swings with the seat you stick their legs through like a little basket so they can't fall out was made for a teenage girl. She got stuck and lost blood flow to her legs. We had to cut her down and get her to a hospital to have it safely removed due to it basically becoming a tourniquet on both her legs. The other is general, but it's people who didn't wear a seatbelt and the people they killed as a result. You have less control of a vehicle when you're not being held in place, so those wrecks are more common. As the first sign of trouble, your butt moves in the seat and reduces your ability to control the vehicle. You also become a projectile. If you're lucky, you only kill yourself. If you're not, you wind up bouncing around and killing a passenger. Also the leading cause of partial ejections and re-entry to vehicles since nothing was holding them to the seats. So many times I could have just been there cutting someone out of a seat and them being barely beat up, but instead they had been scalped and died or hit their kid or spouse or other family member or friend and killed them. One in particular I remember was a large man not wearing a seatbelt in an overturned truck. He woke up while we were working on him cutting the passenger side up to get down to him as the vehicle was on its side, driver side down. He kept asking us how his son was. At first we didn't get it. Then we realized he was laying on his 15-16-year-old son, and due to the man's size we didn't see him. The son was wearing a seatbelt, but he died because his father smashed into him and smothered him to death while we worked rather than just wear a seatbelt extender so his seatbelt fit. Also, don't lie to us about if you wore it. Your seatbelt won't fire the pretensioners if they are not engaged in the slot. They are designed that way. There is a circuit that is completed by the vest being clicked in place, which is also how your car knows your passengers are wearing a seatbelt or not and sets off that obnoxious alarm. There is also a sensor in the passenger front seat of most modern vehicles to detect the weight of a small person, which is why your sodas or pizzas at whatever set off the alarm. Just wear the damn seatbelt and don't lie. If you were wearing it, I won't be able to pull tons of slack on it when I arrive. Guess what goes in the report as the determining factor your insurance sees as to if you should have your medical covered as a result of an accident? Yup. I don't know what they do with the information, but I have to write it in the report. Source: State Vehicle Rescue Technician and Firefighter, mostly volunteer at this point. There was a horrifying but effective seatbelt advert when I was a kid, 90s England, that basically went today Joe killed his mum, then sat back down with the kid sitting in the back and belted and smashing into the driver's seat. Turned me into one of those kids who would nag everyone about their seatbelts, but I've been in a couple of crashes since and walked away. Obligatory, not a fireman, but they were most definitely involved. I used to work in a Nick public grammar school over the summers to pay for college back in the 90s. One of the full-time employees was a nice guy but stupid. And I don't mean he was slow or anything, he just did dumb shit because he was careless. One time he loaded up a trailer with like 25 gallons of gas and was driving it back through the main school parking lot. He didn't realize that container cracked open and spilled all 25 gallons in the parking lot. He didn't want to get in trouble, so he thought the best way to get rid of the evidence was to set the gas on fire. He didn't realize that burning gas gives off a lot of black smoke, and a gigantic cloud of black smoke coming from a school generally attracts a lot of attention from first responders. Panicking, he tries to put the flaming lake of gas out by driving over it with his car. The fire department gets there, screaming at him to stop driving his car through flaming gasoline. They finally get the fire out and just screamed at this guy for like 25 minutes. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen. I was a Navy corpsman, so this one is probably a bit of a reach, but what ifs. Marine comes to sick call with a seriously beaten up dick. Like, lacerations, bruising. Thing was really fucked up. Asked him what he did and he insisted that what happened was that he had a surprise boner and it hit his zipped up pants zipper and basically went all garbage disposal on his junk. Dude would not drop this narrative no matter how many times we told him that this just doesn't happen. Finally, Doc, the actual MD, comes in and tells him enough of this shit. Yada yada, write him up for malingering. Needed the full story. Dude jammed his wiener into the back of a computer tower. According to him, there was an opening back there, probably because old PC towers in the Navy routinely had shit swapped out and they didn't always cover openings when things were removed. So, because he was a fucking donkey, he stuck his finger in it and felt a light tingling sensation as his skin made contact with something electrical. So he took the next logical step and whipped out his dick and shoved it into the back of this computer. What he did not account for was that the opening had sharp metal edges. But once inside, he got that tingling feeling, and so he felt like he might as well finish the job before he pulled out. Plus, and this is where I had to stop myself from laughing, he felt it was smarter to pull himself out flaccid rather than hard. Taps forehead. This was not a young man. This was not a man without rank. I remember asking a firefighter about this once, and he said a guy who was fugging a woman. Her husband came home, so he jumped out the second story window buck naked and impaled himself through the upper leg on a fence paling. It was one of those fleur-de-lis ones, so it fucked up his leg pretty badly. They had to cut the paling out of the fence and load him into an ambulance. We needed to close the main connection through a forest over the winter because the trees were falling faster on the road than we could remove them due to way too much snow falling. Also, the redirection was more than an hour longer due to the snow. Some cars thought that they would come through but turned around as soon as they saw the trees on the road. One semi also thought he'd get through. He drove up to the trees and called the fire brigade and complained why we didn't remove the trees. As he was calling, a bunch of trees behind him also fell, locking him in. It stood there 1 month before the trees and the snow could get removed by us that at least the semi can back out. We needed another month until the road was free again. Where da fuck do you live? Because I'm pretty sure nature is telling you all to leave. I'm not a firefighter, but I used to do a lot of disaster response work. Hurricane Floyd. Eastern NC. I had a farmer with a large family that refused to evacuate his house. Stubborn bastard. River had broke loose, floodwaters were coming up fast, and the police had given up on changing his mind. I drove my truck right up into his yard, rolled down the window and asked him to dress his kids in something orange or bright yellow. He asked me why and I said so body recovery will be able to distinguish them from all the dead pigs floating around. He told me to fuck off, but 5 minutes later he had the whole family in the vehicle and they got the hell out. Obligatory, not a firefighter, but recently in San Diego a group of suburban moms decided to take their infants up the local hiking spot called Cowles Mountain. It's not a particularly grueling hike as many children and elderly people can do it. However, there is a heat stroke warning posted at the trailhead. Not to mention it can get pretty hot here, and this last week was no exception with temperatures exceeding 90 degrees. Well, these idiots took their infants up in this heat. The trail is pretty exposed and due to its easy accessibility and Instagram worthiness, lots of inexperienced hikers flocked to it. Many times with little to no water because they underestimated how hot and difficult it could be. Needless to say, the fire department EMS and chopper were all called as these moms had taken their babies up and were too tired and exhausted to come down. They had to go up and give water, check their conditions, and some even carried the babies down. I know fires are a lot hotter, but I bet they were cursing out these moms in their heads as they had to hike up the mountain in pretty much full gear. The moms came strolling down laughing and flipping off the cameras as they were angry people were going to see their stupidity. This happened all because they wanted to take a group photo with their infants on a mountain on a hot day. Edit. 2 kids and 2 infants.